Hey everybody, this is the Smitten Kitten Callie D, and I have a very special guest on today. This is my Aunt Stacie, technically like my third cousin, but there was a bunch of nieces and nephews on that side, and I kind of just blended in, and everybody called her Aunt Stacie, so that's what she's been to me. But here in the last few years, she's been kind of like my mom figure, if you will, somebody I need to go to for advice. Always looked up to her, so she's a really awesome lady. I'll let her kind of introduce herself and let you guys know kind of who she is and what she's about. And then we're going to talk about having no romance and celibacy after a breakup before trying to find romance again. Is that right, Aunt Stacie? Is that a good way to describe it?
That's exactly perfect.
Yeah, so just go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know kind of who you are, what you're about.
Great. Stacie York, and I am from Southern California. My maiden name is Stacie Nanette Wall. I was raised in La Puente and Covina, California. And when I turned 17 years old, I joined the Air Force, and I spent 9 years in the Air Force working on airplanes. And then when I got out, I had a 31-year career in behavioral health. My professional success has always kicked butt on my relationship success. So I was always very career minded. And I love the guys. When I was in the Air Force, once there was like 250 guys and 17 women in the barracks, so it was like a smorgasbord for us. And so I enjoyed the men, and I was one of my jokes in recovery. I am in long-term recovery. Is that by the time I turned 21, before I was even old enough to drink, I was already an alcoholic. I had bipolar that was untreated, so I was suffering from mania, which has a sexual aspect of it, called hypersexuality. I had a sexual abuse issues, and I had been married and divorced twice. So Erica Kane on all my children and Liz Taylor are my mentors, because they've been married more times than me. So when people ask me how many times I've been married, I always say less than Liz Taylor and Erica Kane. That's my stock answer.
Yeah. And I've discussed this with another one of my friends who's been married 5 times, and how some people kind of like, when you say something like that, they're like, oh, like it's bad or something. But like, she got asked to marry 5 times. Like, how many women out there are struggling just to even do it the first time? So anytime somebody tells me they're married and divorced, and I definitely see that as like a multiple times, almost a code of honor more than anything you should be shameful about.
And I've actually used that one. One of my other lines was always, I didn't say yes every time I was asked.
That part. Yeah. So the topic today is kind of withholding from intimacy and romance in order to kind of grow as a person before trying to enter another relationship. And I know the time that you're about to speak about, right after that, you met Uncle Russ, and y'all been married for how long now?
20 years on December 1st of this year.
I thought it was 20, because Jarrett was just a little baby. But so that's pretty significant. How long was your relationship prior to that?
And my last marriage was 11 years. And then
Okay.
I had just 2 baby ones back in the day.
Okay. Got it. So do you want to go ahead and just kind of start on the subject of maybe why you decided, or what kind of led up to the events of you deciding to kind of go celibate and not even date?
Yes. And it weaves into my recovery from addiction. When I was in early recovery, when I got into recovery, I was married, and I was in a marriage that was verbally abusive. And I hadn't really labeled it that, but recovery helped me do that when I was working on my step work. And so a couple years in recovery, one of the rules in recovery that's not really like a written down rule so much as just folklore, is not to make any major decisions the first year. I think you even discussed that before. Right. And so I was like, when people were coming in their first year and they were being told, don't get in a relationship, and they were faced with this issue of not, like you're talking about, not getting in a relationship, not dating. Right. On purpose, okay? Not because it's not working out or no one's asking. So I'm like, nah. I didn't have to do that. I had no interest in doing that. The whole idea seemed very foreign to me. And then when I did break up in my marriage, I already had a few years behind my belt of recovery. So that rule really didn't apply to me because
Right.
it's really about being new in recovery and not having a strong basis to be able to be in a relationship and date.
Right.
And so I went out of that relationship straight into dating, just the youngest, hottest guys I could find. I was having a great time. And I ended up dating this guy. And when I was in the relationship was when my brother Steve was killed in a car accident.
Right.
And so then I really was in type of a state like I shouldn't be getting in, making major decisions for my life when you're in that kind of heavy grief. But I was already in the relationship. Before he died, I viewed the relationship as fun. I was having fun. But after he died, then I had my claws in it because I wasn't letting go of anything, no matter how small, because I wasn't going to put any more grief on my grief. I can say all that now. At the time, I wasn't aware that dynamic was going on. Yeah. So I just kind of pushed him into engagement, which obviously I have some skills at doing. So
maybe that'll be our next segment.
Like I always say, I said, be careful asking for a ring. I tell women, don't ever ask for a ring. I asked for one once and he shoved it down my effing throat.
Oh gosh.
So we got engaged and immediately he started acting out to try to sabotage it. And that worked and it was successful. And I got out. And that was a point of which I was like, I need to do something different. I need a break. And my sponsor in recovery at the time gave me some good advice about staying out of a relationship for a while. And she's like, maybe 6 months. But I did it like I did alcohol and drugs. How about for today, one day at a time? Because I don't like to be told what to do. And two, obviously I'm not great at commitment, right? So I didn't commit to going into celibacy and going into a break. Just like, from the beginning, how it
you didn't put a time limit on it. You were like, just for today.
I was like, for now, the same thing I did when I first went to my first 12-step meeting. I'm like, I'll do this for now. So I'm doing it for now. So, so I just went on and I got some good advice from people. And the best advice one lady gave me, and I did end up with a friend who also had done celibacy twice, once for 2 years and once for 2.5, which I thought she was absolutely nuts, but she had good advice about it. And she, and what I was being told was just focus on doing the things you love.
Right. Yeah.
So me and the ex-fiance had been looking at houses when it broke off. So I continued my search and I bought a house on my own with my own credit and my own income when I was, in my early 30s. And so I was really proud of that. And my mother and I helped move me in there. And then that left me living in Waco. And so I was very involved in the recovery community there. Mm-hmm. And so I went to a lot of meetings with the recovery community. Because of healthcare and my job in senior management, I was invited to a lot of fundraisers that were like black tie stuff.
Right.
I'm like having lunch with people who have however many tattoos and piercings, right? Yeah. And then people are walking by from work, doctors and stuff, and going, "Who was that you were having lunch with, Stacie?" And because of anonymity, I'd go, "Oh, that was some of my family." So then I was at a black tie affair at night, so it was just so rich and colorful. I felt like I was in a kaleidoscope. And then I started attending, I joined a poetry group that met at Barnes and Nobles. Mm-hmm. Am I going too long or this is okay?
Oh, no, we have 45 minutes is usually what I try to schedule.
Okay, so I went to Barnes and Nobles and joined this poetry club. And it was just such a ragtag group. There was this old man that wrote cowboy poetry. And I'm saying good freaking cowboy poetry. And there's this, I don't know whether we can cuss. So there's an old woman over here who, writes this beautiful stuff. There was a young guy that had schizophrenia. I knew that, but they didn't know I had that kind of expertise to recognize. And all he did was read Pink Floyd lyrics. And it made all the young guys mad because he was plagiarizing and nobody else was paying no mind. And then there was several nice looking guys. And so I had like this, there was some male companionship that I got in this poetry group, but I just never took it. I have this aura when I travel alone that's called don't F with me aura. Where I can walk in and sit right up at a bar and no one will mess with me. Right. So you can have your I'm not available aura, and instead of your poor me, please come and just
Right.
Feel this
Yeah.
hole in my heart right here. Thank you. You know, so I was really confident and very much, I'm not in this poetry group to date, but I'm going to have fun listening to this poetry these men are reading and stuff.
Right.
And so the two friends I found and I hung out with was a guy that named Donnie, who was a gay man, very handsome. So he escorted me to all my events at work, and no one knew he was gay. They just thought he was this just handsome character I kept showing up with.
Hey,
And he played the part. He played the part. And then another guy was a guy who just, you know, there was nothing in between us, but we had so much fun together, named Vinny. And so Vinny was like madly in love with this other woman, right? You know, unreturned.
Yeah.
So I had these two guy friends, and they both wrote poetry. So they like were emailing me poetry. And so I wrote a poem called Men Send Me Poetry. So, and then I wrote like some of the most, you know, unbelievable poetry of my entire life while I was in that. I've never beat it before, and I've never beat it since. Nice. And it was all, you know, me, I have a spiritual program, spiritual life. And it was all very much me talking to God and telling him what I wanted in my life. But it wasn't like 20 poems about what I wanted in a man. It was like 10 poems about what I wanted in life and one about what I wanted in a man. My focus was really becoming so much more varied than a man. And and then I joined, I bought a Corvette. I bought a brand new Corvette, and I went up to Dallas, and I drove it off the showroom floor. I mean, it was $51,000. I don't mind saying now. I don't really talk about my, you know, funds and finances very much, but I don't mind saying that. It was
brand new.
Brand new, emerald green because it went good with my red hair. This has gone gray, okay, and tan and black interior. I called my dad, my sponsor, and my big brother and disclosed to them what my finances were and if this was an impulsive bad decision or a good one. And they all three thought that this was the perfect time in my life to have my dream car and I should buy the Vet.
Fuck yeah.
And, you know, and then I drove it off the showroom floor feeling like, you know, this just isn't another one of my bad decisions in my life. You know, people, responsible people are telling me it's a good one. So now I'm the chick with the Vet. I own my own house. I'm in the Vet Club, a poetry club. I joined the Vet Club. And then the guys in there talked me into racing my Vet, Grand Prix racing my Vet. So I started Grand Prix racing my Vet with the group. You know, it wasn't against other people. And they said for a woman, I was really good because it would cost me like $800 in tires on a good day. But they said for a woman, I was really good because I would go balls to the wall as soon as the flag hit with no hesitancy. Because I was like, why did they have separate women's races than men's? Because shouldn't that be even? Like, why is that not even? And they said, we don't know why, but the women's times aren't as good. They just will not balls to the wall. There's a hesitancy there. I had no hesitancy. And so I had a great time. I had a great time.
Yeah.
And you know, that's just ways that, you know, I made myself full. And so I, you know, when it was my birthday was coming up, I was like, I'm going to send myself flowers and put from God, because God gave me all the ways it means to be able to be in this position, sending myself flowers. And then Donnie sent me some, and Vinny sent me some, and my parents sent me some, and another friend sent me some, and my office was full of flowers.
It's like you manifested flowers.
I totally manifested flowers.
Yeah.
And so the word that I chose throughout the whole ordeal, because it just kept getting longer, right?
Right.
And the word that I chose throughout the whole ordeal was contentment. I studied the contentment in the Bible. I looked at instances in it in my recovery books. I went to Barnes and Nobles and looked up to find things about contentment. And the whole thing was just about contentment. I wrote poems about contentment.
Right.
And that's really what it was about for me. I went to church every Sunday. You know, I used to sing when I was young, but since my siblings always said, Stacie, shut up, because I was bipolar.
Yeah.
So I equated that to that I didn't sing good. And it was later that singing with some friends in the Air Force, someone said, you sing really good, Stacie. Yeah. So I threw some parties from recovery celebration parties and sang at them with my friend Chance accompanying me on the guitar. And then when I was in Waco and I was going to this church, I got up and sang Morning Has Broken in front of 400 people.
Nice.
And that was huge for me to get up and do that.
Mhm.
And, my weight was down. I looked great. I had a great wardrobe. It was
Yeah.
just a great time in my life.
Yeah.
And I just had absolutely no interest in more. And I would like to say that like 5 guys that were just perfect and made me go, oh my God, this is the one came in and out of my life, but they didn't.
Right.
I did see Russell.
Yeah.
Because he was new in recovery.
Mhm.
But I didn't date people with less than 2 years clean.
Mhm.
And he didn't have 2 years. And then, so I just looked at him basically because I
Right.
thought he was to die for hot. And then I went on my merry way. We didn't belong to the same meeting, so we would occasionally see each other at a meeting.
Right.
We always
But you
talked
noticed.
to each other.
You
We knew
noticed.
we were attracted to each other from
Right.
second one. He thought I was out of his league, and I was like, he's, just doesn't have the clean time for me to
Right.
date.
He
I'm
needs
not
to
gonna,
grow.
yeah. So that was the only thing. There was, I can't say that I had to resist Mr. Right while I was doing it, but I like to think that spiritually, there was a reason Mr. Right wasn't in my face at the same
Right.
time that I was trying to practice celibacy, because
Yeah.
I'm just not the person historically who says no when I want to say yes.
That must be.
I
That
don't
must
play
run in
no
the
for games.
family.
I don't say no for games, okay? You don't have to
Uh,
worry about whether there's a consent issue if I've said yes.
You're right.
I enjoyed having a sexual life all of my adult life,
Right.
whether I was single or whether I wasn't. When I was in the Air Force, I treated sex the same way men did.
Right.
They were what was around me, and they did whatever they wanted to do. They slept with who they wanted to when they wanted to. And I did the same thing. I'm not saying
Right.
I was completely promiscuous. I'm just saying I didn't have any rules,
Right. Yeah.
that a lot of women might put on themselves and feel guilty for and things like that.
Right.
So, um,
That's what we call the sexual liberation.
the sexual liberation. Well, I was doing it in 1983. And I was a late bloomer in school. So, what a lot of girls might have done in early college or
Right.
in their senior year because they were sexually active and that kind of thing. I had that time in the Air Force living in the barracks because I was a late bloomer. So I was not sexually active till the very end of high school. Not by choice. That's just how it worked out. Let me see, what else can I say? Do you have any questions about it at this point? Because I don't want to go into how I got out of it yet.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and what I liked what you said earlier is that you didn't hesitate when you race. You were balls to the wall, and I feel like you kind of you also embody that, maybe not in like such a like wild and crazy way, but I feel like when you want to go for something, you do it. You know what I mean? You put everything behind it and you just do it right. So like I think that was like a really good metaphor just for your life in general. And I feel like I'm the same way too. I tried to not hesitate. I definitely there's a saying that one of my friends, Lindsay, always drills into my head, and it's I don't know, I think a writer, some author came up with the idea, but it's like fuck yes or no. If it's not a fuck yes, then it's a no. Like if you're not like so invested in somebody that you're like fuck yes, I want to do this, then the answer is no. And like we really should take a look at that, like instead of leading people on or getting into relationships that we were hesitant about to begin with, that don't ever change, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's kind of what that reminded me of, and I think you kind of embody that a lot.
Well, thank you. And I feel the same about you. And one of the things that I did during celibacy that the average person necessarily wouldn't do is do step work on men. And somebody else might go to church and do that. Somebody else might go to the bookstore and read some books or download something. There's always, guidance available. But the guidance that what I did was, it was different because of the philosophy of recovery and because of what I wanted to do and who I am, is that I wanted to look at me. This wasn't about like, let me list all these guys that I've been with and find out how screwed up they are, which is all I see on Facebook today that drives me freaking crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. something's wrong with me because the last 5 guys that I've dated has something wrong with them. And I
Right.
really believe that we attract somebody at the level that we're at.
For
And
sure.
so I wanted to raise my level up. And so I did the step work. And so I did the step work on every man from the beginning to the present day guy that I had just broke it off with, who was really one of the least important people, it turned out, in my step work was a sabotage engagement guy.
Yeah.
And one of the most important was my ex-husband. And I did step work on him just individually, like worked all 12 steps on just that one man because it was an 11-year marriage and I loved him. And I left him in love with him and was blown away by the very idea that you could actually do that or would do that, because there was no way that I could be healthy in the relationship. And with 4 years of begging him to get help, he wouldn't.
Right.
So thankfully he did afterwards. And like when I was doing this whole celibacy thing, he came around to pick up our son and thanked me for dumping him. So because he said he was afraid he may have committed suicide and that he wouldn't be here if I hadn't, because the only motivator that was going to be big enough for him to look at himself was that he had to lose me.
Right.
And he went on to meet a woman who's lovely and had kids, and I wish him the best ever, right?
Yeah.
So I worked my step work on him, and it was funny because when I wrote down all these, all these ways that I defined abuse in the relationship, which it was very vague, because it was verbal and emotional, and he was really good at hiding it. He didn't do it in front of other people, just when we were alone, and at the end it bled out over into in front of other people. So I made this list of all these examples of abuse. I still have it in my journal. Belittling, that kind of thing. He was a very belittling person.
Yeah.
And I wrote it all down. And my sponsor told me to write down 50 ways that he had hurt me. And I did. And then I came back without knowing the next part of the assignment, which now I'm ruining it for everybody because, step 2, but I didn't. And step 2 was write down 50 ways that you hurt him.
Right.
So, and I did, and I was honest. And when I brought it back to her, she said, "You are a worthy adversary." And when she said that, I became equal than and a worthy adversary and not a victim. And I don't like victimhood. It's not my deal. And so that really appealed to me that, yes, he had been verbally abusive, but boy, did I give it to him. And I really did my best to hold my own. I did my best to come back and give him a chance to maybe do it different. I set a lot of boundaries towards the end that changed the dynamic so much that even he wasn't interested in it anymore.
Right. And I think that's a big kicker. I feel like, because you can set boundaries up, but they'll come in and try to push those boundaries, and especially if you've been weak before. And you've let those boundaries go, they definitely come back just to try to see if there's just a hole in that dam, and but I think overall, any of the relationships I've been in, when I was done and they just weren't yet, like that was the stopper. Because if you no longer engage with them in that back and forth of why can't you and like all of that, you're just like, whoop, this is how it is. This is my wall. Either meet me here or go away. Like they usually run.
Well, engagement sabotage guy was interesting. Well, and I did write a letter to my ex, a letter of amends that only focused on my part, that didn't say I'm sorry I did this, but you did this.
Right.
There was no buts, nothing. It was clean. It's what I call a clean amends.
Yeah.
That's Stacie Anonymous. That doesn't come from the program. The amends does, but the clean part, it's got to be really clean. And had other people look at it to make sure I wasn't twisting words and that kind of thing. No, and I mailed it to him, and I mailed it to him. So 6 months later, he thanked me for it when we were on the phone for something and said it meant a lot to him. And it was weird because when he mentioned it, I had forgotten about it because it didn't it really didn't require a reply, because it really wasn't for me to expect something of him. It was my amends, right? So I did that. So I followed all that through after doing that step work on X. And then on this, on the engagement sabotage guy, he had told me once, probably some of your viewers will enjoy this because it's very grandiose, so to speak. But he told me every woman he ever dated always came back just to have sex with him again.
Oh, fun. One of those.
So I thought that was an interesting comment,
Yeah.
So
He was setting up a booty call. This is what we call a dick appointment.
he was setting up a booty call for some future time.
Just
didn't work out.
It's a get in free card. He gave you a get in free card.
They just have to have some more of me. Like I'll call him Bob. He was like, he just needed to have more Bob, but he had a different name than that. Yeah. I'm not naming him because I don't want to give credit, but for anything. But anyways, I thought that was obviously should have been like, that's one of the red flags, right? That he even said that.
Yeah.
That I ignored while I was getting engaged with him. And so then after we broke up and everything, I made the commitment that I was never going to call him again. No contact.
Yeah.
Zero contact. So I have a saying called asses and elbows. And that means that when you get dumped, the only thing he should see of you is your ass and your elbows as you are walking away, going on with your life. Yeah. You can ask some of the nieces in the family that are
you just told me that probably like a month ago. So.
And they would be like, they'd be like, asses and elbows, right, Aunt Stacie? I would get a text, and so I did that, and it was hard because I was in marketing. I was in my car all day driving around, and I had a cell phone. Yeah. And it wasn't even like everyone wasn't driving around with cell phones all day, and so here's the cell phone next to me. So it felt like a beer. Yeah. Or a joint. Oh, for sure. I literally felt like, because even though I had already had the last word, so to speak, in our last conversation, because I couldn't stop laughing through it because it was so funny. I was like so over it. But I kept, my mind keeps dreaming up all these last things, and the last thing that I want to say. Right. That's torturing me.
And another thing.
Because he's the one that broke up with me. Right. And so, which it only took 2 weeks to know that he had done for me what I could do for myself. Right. Old saying. But I still wanted the revenge and that feeling of wanting to get that revenge. And that phone was just sitting there, and it was just, I just like, look at that phone. And I was like, if I don't touch the phone, I can't pick it up and call this dude. And then I'm talking to some sponsee on the phone and saying, if you don't touch alcohol, you can't drink it. Right. Yeah. It was hard. I mean, it was really hard, and it got slowly easier. And within 6 months of no contact, I was so done with him. And he called me to make amends, and at work, and he was all apologizing, and the way he worded it was actually making it sound like it was my fault that he had to actually hurt me. I mean, it was just like a really bad, it wasn't a clean amends, put it that way. Yeah. And I said, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I got to go back to work. Have a nice life. Bye. He's like, bye, and I hung up. And I ran into him one other time. I really didn't care. But so that was a really important part too during celibacy, was that I was not calling him. And I ran into a really good friend of his and mine. Well, it was really his friend. I hadn't seen him since I had broken up with Bob. Or he had broken up with me, and he asked me if he could take me to dinner one night, and I went, and he was married. It wasn't a date or anything, and we were eating, and he said, there's something that I really want to tell you about Bob. He goes, and he confided this in me, and I shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to anyways, because I think he deserves it, because I think the way he treated you was really horrible, and I thought that you handled the situation with dignity and grace, and I'm in awe of how you did that. And I said, well, what? And he said, the fact that you never called him ate his lunch. And I said, well, that's not the way. I said, I did not call him for him. He goes, I know you didn't. And I said, he goes, but I thought you might enjoy it anyway. I go, I just say that's some pretty awesome whipped cream, nuts, and cherry as far as I'm concerned.
For sure.
So I just didn't even think I would ever get that circle back, right, on that not calling. And actually, and then because I remembered that comment he made, I didn't come back for a booty call either. Right. That's what was eating his lunch, right? Yeah. And so anyways, there's, well, I guess a little bit of satisfaction in that, in knowing that. But and then I heard later that he met a woman, an attorney or something, very successful woman, and got married and had a kid. And the one thing is that when you do look at yourself. Even if in a situation I'm 95% wrong, right? Well, I'm 95% innocent, I'm 5% guilty.
Mhm.
I discard the 95% and then I work on the 5% as if it's because it's my 100%
Yeah.
responsibility. It's my 100% part.
Yeah.
And when I did that with different men, the more I realized what a F up I was,
Right.
it elevates them and it does put us on more equal standing.
Mhm.
And and then that allowed me to get healthier and healthier. And at a certain part, I felt like I had been there's nothing else I could do. You know what I mean? Like, what else can I do?
Right.
I felt like before God, I was bringing the best Stacie that I could bring to a future relationship within my power.
And that's really like the biggest thing is a lot of broken people are getting together and they're broken and they're hurting and they're continuing the cycle of breaking and hurting people that then break and hurt people. And
Yes.
so, a lot of these relationships could probably have been a lot better or non-existent had both people been whole first.
Yes. Yes.
So that's I'm definitely a big proponent of mental health. I think everybody could use a checkup. It's just like checking the oil in your car or taking other things to get service. Like we service all of our other things so they'll last forever except for our brain. So or our emotions or our emotional health, intelligent or emotional intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of something that I've been working on. And I think relationships are a good way because you grow so much as an individual. But I think also until you step into a relationship, maybe you don't know that you have some issues that you might have because of how you move through life as a single person. You're able to have a little bit more barriers. And then when you actually allow somebody to come in close, and it's like, oh, fuck, like there's that feeling again, and so I'm really thankful that for all of my relationships for what they have taught me. And I'm kind of like you. I try to figure out what was it about me that made me attracted to that or made me put up with that, or I ignored that red flag. I saw it, it was waving there all bright and red. Like it wasn't even like a maroon, not a burgundy. No, that bitch was red. And, I chose not to see it or think that somehow magically it would turn green.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And when I was single and practicing celibacy, I mean, I did get lonely, but I was able to with these men that were my friends that knew
Right.
what I was doing, and there was no question about it. That God didn't put but he really didn't put much temptation in front of me, even though temptation had already been there all my life. It's sort of like I told this attorney one time when we were at lunch at a business meeting. I said, I wish something good would happen to me that I could sue somebody for. And he said, Stacie, something happens to you several times a day that you could sue somebody for. You're just not looking for that. That's just not where your mind is at. And I feel like that's sort of the same as when I was practicing celibacy. But I did, how rated is this segment?
Oh, it's okay. It's going on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. They don't care about stuff.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying that, like at first I used to keep like my feminine toy collection type stuff.
Yeah, we can talk about that. That's fine.
Like in a dresser drawer, and then it was moved to the nightstand drawer, and then it was under the bed and plugged in all the time. And then it was beside the bed, and I basically told my housekeeper, that's where it goes now.
Maybe just don't go over there.
So that was just a joke that I told at the time, because actually, that's kind of how it went down.
Yeah.
It's that, you just have to take care of yourself, but it's not the same. And there's one thing that I learned that was very important to me spiritually. And one was that I learned that God could be everything to me, but a man.
Right.
I can't replace a physical man in my
A
life
partner.
was
Yeah.
gone,
A
right?
life partner. Yeah.
And that my partner could be many, many, many things to me, but not God.
Right.
And
That's a
that
good.
was a good differentiation and lesson. And so I actually started getting to be just from the celibacy part, because it's easy to talk about all this fun stuff you're doing, but the hard part is that you're being celibate the whole time. Once you get past a certain amount of time celibate, it gets easier. Just like giving up anything else, you stop having the cravings. It gets easier and easier and easier. And then everybody has a point of which, okay?
Right.
So, and I, at the time, I only had the one friend who had practiced celibacy. That was one of my key people that was helping me through this. But since then, I've met and, been through helping other women do this, since. And there seems to be this sort of thing where everybody has a point of which it's enough time now for you.
Yeah.
So
Like, okay,
I
I'm
was,
done. It's happening.
I actually would sit there and touch my arm like this, and it hurt to touch my arm. It like physically hurt to touch my arm because my like I felt like my body was so craved for human touch that somebody that's a friend just giving me a hug can't give me.
Yeah.
That I actually ached. Every cell in my body started to feel like it was in pain, like I had fibromyalgia, like my sister or something,
Yeah.
And so I called that gal and told her, and I said, can you have lunch with me? I really need to talk to someone that knows what I'm going through. The idea of coming out of celibacy wasn't even like on my radar.
Right.
And I went to lunch with her, and there was one guy that was that went to my church, and that he was like a local, like a celebrity sort of guy. I mean, he was very well known in the state, let's say a celebrity in the state. And we had been flirting like crazy through email and stuff.
Okay.
But so it was just email.
Yeah.
So I mean that was safe. It never got anything R-rated, X-rated, PG-13ish or anything, right? But there was an attraction, so he was around, and so I went out to lunch with this gal, and I explained to her everything I was feeling, and she goes, Stacie, it's time for you to come out of celibacy. I was like, what? She's like, it's time for you to come out of celibacy. So I said, okay. And she goes, you need to sleep with that guy, blah, blah, blah. So I just called him up and was like, hey, can you come over tomorrow? I'm ready to come out of celibacy. And he was like, holy, because he saw me as completely hands off.
Yeah.
I had not said anything about that there was any end to this. I think he thought I was going to be in celibacy until I got married.
Christians do that. So
yeah. Well, and I had talked about doing that, but like I said, everyone has their time, and some people's time might be when they get married, right? And on the wedding night, which is beautiful. Yeah. My time was that day after.
I just love it. I just love it that I was a dude from church. Like, you're like, this guy I went to church with. Yeah, we were flirting, and
this guy from church
totally fornicated with me.
And he had a girlfriend, so he broke up with her just to be with me. So anyway, and then she scratched my vet.
Oh my goodness!
So it wasn't pretty. So so basically, we spent an evening.
Did she go to church too?
She went to a different church, but sometimes visited our church. But she came all the time when I started coming up, anyways. So that wasn't too cool. But he was really lying, because I was later to find out that he never really broke it off. So to her, he was cheating, and to me, he wasn't. So it was that kind of game.
Yeah. And
he was very sincere, and a lot of people couldn't believe it when I told them the story because of his persona on TV. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, so that that was my first little thing. So usually I'll just say, and then I met Russell, because I don't want to tell this whole story about this jerk from church, but that's actually who I came out of celibacy with. And then I was like, okay, here's the deal. And this is really, this is really a close, if we're getting close, is that when you have bipolar, mine is seasonal. And I had found this out as strictly as having my pharmacist once say, oh, wow, you came and picked up this medicine the same exact day last year. And it was for mania. Yeah. To mellow me out, the mania, which is where the hypersexuality comes in, right?
Right.
So I was like, okay, spring is coming. I'm bipolar. I'm going to have my spring manic episode. I'm not going to let spring go by again And it's one instance of being with someone doesn't satisfy 18 months of none. Let me
Right.
tell you
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So, I knew I wanted a partner, even if it wasn't
Mhm.
I just wanted a fling, basically. So I
Right.
called it a spring fling. I wanted to have a spring fling with somebody.
Mhm.
So I'm just like scoping everybody. So now I'm like a predator. And I'm like, oh my God, like the homeless guy on the corner is looking good, So I'm like a predator.
Yeah.
And I walked into this meeting and I sat down and the meeting started. And then after the meeting started, from behind me, the door behind me walks somebody, turns around, sits down, looks at me, and it's Russell. And he's wearing his welding cap. And there's a board behind him where everybody has their clean time put up for who's celebrating that month.
Oh, okay.
And above him said Russell 2
Aw.
for 2
You're like,
years.
that's a sign.
And my exact thought was, I forgot about Russell. He is so my spring fling. He just doesn't know it. So I seen him at another meeting, and I went up and asked him, after the meeting, asked him if he wanted to go to coffee sometime, and gave me my number, and we had a couple phone calls, and then that weekend came up, and he had Tyler for the weekend. Tyler was like 4, about to turn 5, and he was staying at his mom's for the weekend, and they were out of town, and he invited me to come over on Friday and hang with him and Tyler. And by the end of the weekend, we were both looking at each other going, this is it. Is this it? This is it. Is this it for you? This is it. And this is how Faith Hill did it too with, what's his name she's married to?
Tim McGraw.
They did the exact same thing. They went on a
Yeah.
drive and they went, this is it. Is this it? Yeah, this is
Right.
it. Is this it for you? This is it. I said, we're connected. And he goes, yeah, we're connected. And we've been married almost 20 years. I can't say that we haven't had our problems, and we've had some big ones, but I've learned that, from older couples, that people don't stay together forever because they didn't go through anything. They stay together forever because they didn't break up when they went through that shit.
Right.
So we've had our times, but we've had so many good times, and he's my person, he's just my person. And I feel like we have, our relationship is healthy because one of the healthiest things about it is that no matter how we've had ups and downs and things, is that no matter how much of a disagreement we have, we both always work on ourselves and come back to it with our part. We don't come back to it with, okay, now I've thought about the disagreement we had last night. Here's my list of reasons why I think I'm still right. And we both have character defects that drive each other crazy, that will always drove each other crazy, that will always, there's always the big one.
Right.
And he procrastinates. I don't like to admit I'm wrong in that, for some reason, intimate relationship.
Yeah.
So, we went around and around in those 2 areas. And one time, like 10 years into it, he just said, quit complaining about my procrastination. It's never going to go away. That's who I am. I'm ADD. It's never going anywhere. And then, I'm like, I still think I need to be better at admitting when I'm wrong. So I don't feel like I'm as good of an excuse.
Yeah.
But he puts up with my bipolar and all that encompasses. There have been consequences in our marriage as a result of my bipolar. There's been consequences in our marriage as a result of his ADD. Both of us have screwed up and cost us money or things, large sums, that kind of stuff. And we really never even have a leg to stand on with each other because we're so equal at being good at things, and we're kind of equal at effing things up as well.
Right.
And giving each other grace when that time comes, because we want it when it's our turn.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's like, I'm always good at giving people grace. And sometimes I wonder, if it's, and I feel like that's where the balance is. It's like an equal give and take in all relationships. And when you feel like one of those sides are tipped, whichever way, maybe it's time to reevaluate the situation and maybe, go your separate ways until you can both become balanced again. But I always think that people have the ability to change. And so I'd like to continue to think that, even though a lot of people have proven me wrong, I have seen some people actually do what they need to, but, not with my help. So.
I was seeing a therapist once, but it was when I was doing infertility treatments. It was for
Uh-huh.
that. And but he was a marital therapist, and he was a PhD in social work. He
Hmm.
was one of the, I wish I could quote him. He's not around anymore, but best therapist I ever had. But he told me, and even in his own marriage, that it takes about 10 years, and it did us, we almost followed that path exactly, for both of you to give up on the thing about the other one that bothers you the most and just accept it. So if you could
Yeah.
cut that 10 years down to like a 7-year thing, like the itch, that would be much better.
Right.
Because the 10 years is a long time. Doesn't mean that we were always in that.
Yeah.
It just means that there's just this turning point when you're in, get into, it's a long-term old age. Like now I'm retired. He's
Mhm.
bringing it on home. I say, I've always wanted to be a kept woman. It's what I've always been jealous of, women that could be kept women and not
Yeah.
work and have men take care of them. And that's what I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
but just being in that mature love stage, it's just, and even when we have a disagreement, it's really we're having a contest to see who could outsmart who,
Right.
who's
Yeah.
going to outsmart who and he will say that I win more of our disagreements than he does, and that he thinks he's really smart and he thinks I'm really smart, but he thinks I'm a little smarter than him. He has been able to say that. But when you listen to what he does for a living in engineering design, and you
Mhm.
just listen to him on the phone talking to people about engineering design and stand behind him when he's drawing, then
Mhm.
you realize it's just a different kind of smart.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I am married to a genius, and I needed a genius because I'm not saying I'm a genius. I'm just saying I think intellectual conversation is as hot as a
Yeah,
hot bod
for sure.
or pretty face and long hair.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have our things. I think I'm kind of the same. I need, it's really nice to have somebody that's good looking, fun to look at or easy to look at. But at the end of the day, we're all going to grow older. Who knows what's going to stay the same after 20 years, or 10 years or even 5 years. But somebody that you can definitely like just be friends with, that you just enjoy talking to and being around. I think that's the kicker right there. But all right, well, I think this was wonderful, and we're almost exactly at 45 minutes. Do you have any last words that you'd like to say, or do you feel like I think you've done really well. I really enjoy this, and I'm excited to post it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I just say that practicing celibacy, and this goes for male-female relationships,
Mm-hmm.
all LGBTQ,
Right.
there's no, just whoever you love, whoever you're attracted to. I welcome you to try it if you think it's good for you. It's not good for everybody,
Right.
but I consider that 18 months one of the best 18 months of my life, 20
Mm-hmm.
years later. And it does separate the men from the boys, the women from the
For sure.
girls, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I love you, Aunt Stacie. Thank you so much.
I love you too.
This has been the Smitten Kitten with Callie D with Stacie York. I almost said your name wrong. Stacie York. And that's it.